The new leadership of Iran has approached Trump with a proposal to resume negotiations. Their air defense is destroyed, said Trump. The leadership has been killed. Their air force and their navy are completely destroyed. Now they suddenly want to resume negotiations. It's already too late, said the President of the United States of America yesterday. Last night, Israel blew up the building of Iran's National Security Council and the office of the President of Iran. The United States attacked several schools for corps officers and other military facilities. Israeli drones are freely patrolling the coastal fortifications and have started flying deeper into the country. Whenever a missile silo opens and a launch is being prepared, a kamikaze drone attacks and destroys the launcher. Videos are circulating throughout Iran. Iranian guards from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps scatter away from the silo as soon as they hear the sound of an approaching drone. There have been casualties on the U.S. side. 3 F-15s were shot down over Kuwait. They were mistaken for Iranian aircraft and were shot down by American missiles. All the pilots ejected. 5 servicemen were killed and about 20 soldiers and civilians were wounded. I'll show you the difference between a little later. Between Iraq and Ukraine and between the U.S. and Russia, Iran made a huge mistake. The Sunni countries understood that their population would be outraged if they, together with Israel and the U.S., attacked Muslims. But Iran started firing at Saudi Arabia, at Qatar, at Bahrain. And the governments presented their intention to enter the war as a response to the attack by their treacherous neighbor, Iran.
Something just happened in the Middle East that so-called experts assured us was impossible. Qatar is one of the richest countries on the planet and a key military ally of America in the Persian Gulf. A country that for many years tried to act as a mediator between Iran and the West has just launched offensive strikes against Iran, and they are not alone. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, the entire Persian Gulf region is mobilizing right now.
Qatar, which financed Palestinian terrorists and unrest, by the way, in universities in the United States of America, was a friend of Iran and a mediator between the U.S., Europe, and Iran. This very Qatar, together with Saudi Arabia and others, attacked Iran. Not yet inside Iran, but only their air forces, their missiles, their drones. By the way, it's the same team that invested trillions in tech projects on U.S. territory. And by giving money to Trump for investment, they basically say, well, to put it mildly, where my money is, that's where my family is, right? For them, Iran is either an enemy, a troublesome neighbor, or an obstacle to a peaceful and very comfortable life. They have everything, absolutely everything. I mean, the leadership, of course, not those who make decisions, those who are in charge. Iran is always stirring things up. It's always threatening, and they're always worried that Iran will send something to blow up, do something, or seize something. And it's time to give him up. Instead of Ayatollah's Iran, maybe Iran will become secular, a secular Persia. Together with the Sunnis and Israel, it could form a powerful alliance, or in Trump's style, a protectorate, with a complete absence of wars and conflicts within the region.
The Abraham Accords, which began as a diplomatic handshake, have just turned into a full-fledged military alliance. And I'm going to show you why this might be the most important geopolitical transformation of our lifetime. Senior Western diplomatic sources have confirmed that Qatar has carried out strikes on Iranian territory in the past 24 hours. Israel's Channel 12 was the first to report this, and then a spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry essentially confirmed it. This is a response to Iran's actions since Saturday. Iran launched 3 cruise missiles, 101 ballistic missiles, and 39 kamikaze drones at Qatar's territory.
The new leadership of Iran did what the previous leadership, which was destroyed by Israel and the U.S., would never have done. From being just unfriendly and, so to speak, somewhat offended neighbors, they turned the neighboring Sunni states into enemies. And they gave them free rein.
It's quite remarkable considering that Qatar took such big risks for Iran, isn't that right? Al Jazeera is based in Qatar. They hosted the political office of Hamas. They maintain open channels of communication with Tehran. They present themselves as well an indispensable mediator in any Middle Eastern crisis. But now they have been left with no choice but to enter this war. But on the side of the United States, and remarkably on the side of Israel, which would have been completely unthinkable not so long ago. It is widely reported that Qatar has indeed carried out strikes on Iranian territory. The specific details of the strike, at least at the time of this recording, have not yet been made public.
This is a tremendous opportunity to turn this temporary military alliance into a more long-term trade partnership. So far, Qatar remains silent about its interactions with Israel. It still denies any coordination or connection. The Emirates are shooting down Iranian missiles and drones. Bahrain is coordinating its actions with the U.S., which means also with Israel. Kuwait, Oman, Jordan, and Bahrain are shooting down Iranian planes and missiles. Lebanon has announced a ban on Hezbollah launching strikes on Israel from its territory. They are trying to disarm Hezbollah. Of course, they won't be able to do this themselves. They are too weak for that. But with Israel's help, they might be able to get rid of this organization that is terrorizing the country. It terrorizes Israel, but inside Lebanon it does 100 times more. A little later, by the way, I'll tell you about China's role in pushing for war in Iran. Yes, pushing for war in Iran. Everything that happens in this region is still far from cooperation and full recognition of Israel. Well, by these countries, I mean, but it's already an alliance. That is, a beginning that could grow into a peaceful settlement in the region. So actually, right now, a lot of positive things are happening. It all started with China. Let's trace how this abscess, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, was forming and then burst. It all started when China banned all suppliers of rare earth metals from selling them to the U.S. and our allies. China is practically a monopolist in the world when it comes to rare earth metals. It participates in the production, processing, or refining of them. I'm not sure what the exact term is. On the same day when this became known, Donald Trump said, "Then we'll cut them off from oil." The main oil supply to China came from Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. China received any amount it wanted, and at low prices. Why? Because these countries were under sanctions, and everyone else was afraid to buy from them. But China, as they say, is not afraid of American sanctions. And that's why they said, "I'll buy from you, I can buy from others, or I can buy from you. But if you give me a discount, then, as they say, I'll buy from you." Except for China and perhaps India, they didn't have any serious buyers. Besides, India also bought oil for processing, and then transferred or sold it to Europe, which pretended not to know where the oil was coming from. Two suppliers, Venezuela and Iran, let's say, didn't behave very positively but aggressively toward the United States of America. Venezuela was protecting drug dealers. And Iran was declaring daily, every hour, as soon as they get an atomic bomb, they will immediately start destroying Israel and U.S. bases and interests. America was forced to keep 50,000 troops in the Middle East to protect its allies from Iran's aggression. In addition, Iran sponsored Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, and a number of Shiite militias in Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. So Venezuela was exporting drugs to us and Iran was exporting terrorism. Let's listen to Larry Kudlow. He is interviewing an aide, a former one, of course, Ronald Reagan's national security advisor.
Robert O'Brien, if I'm China, I might have to reconsider a lot of things. I'm leaving. I'm leaving the Middle East. I'm being pushed out of South America. I might not rattle my saber about taking over Taiwan, watching the American military and intelligence. If I were Russia, I don't know if this would affect the Russia-Ukraine situation with this phenomenal show of force and smart intelligence from the American military. You change your mind and views, then what?
Well, of course, you change your mind because if you're China under Biden, they were advancing, they were actively operating in the Western Hemisphere, they were building a base in Venezuela, they were getting cheap sanctioned crude oil from Venezuela at a big discount. We were all paying, the Western world was paying full price for oil, they were paying a reduced price from Venezuela, running it through the Panama Canal, which they took control of. And now they've lost control of the canal in Venezuela? They're being pushed out of the Western Hemisphere, the Middle East. It tied up American troops for 50 years. We had so many troops there because of Iran. And now Iran is leaving, and we'll be able to withdraw our troops. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and hopefully a democratic Iran will be able to control the Middle East. We won't need to be there in the numbers that we are now. These troops will go to the Western Hemisphere, and they will go to the Indo-Pacific region, where they will face China. So, and by the way, China was getting cheap oil from Iran at a discount using the Ghost Fleet. They will lose that cheap oil. They can buy oil. President Trump said, look, we will sell you Venezuelan oil, we will sell you Iranian oil. Pay the full price?
Exactly, 100%.
And at home, we drill. We are self-sufficient. So, the Chinese can play commodity games with rare earth elements trying to cut us off. Well, now we have oil. So, they'll have to play by our rules.
No one understands global oil politics better than Donald Trump. No one.
The economy and politics are tied together in one knot, and war is the continuation of politics when persuasion can't get you what you want, when it's exhausted. And politics is always the development of the economy, and in Iran, religion hinders the economy. That is the reason why it will go away.
This is a grand rage. Will it affect the Russian-Ukrainian war? Will Putin reconsider? Will he understand how it looks to you now? Your final word, please. Last minute, please.
No more Iranian drones, no Iranian ballistic missiles for the Russians, so this will immediately affect the war, and Putin sees how the balance of power in the world is changing. He is watching as Venezuela, probably Cuba, probably Iran, are leaving his orbit. He will have to negotiate.
Brian believes that what is happening in Iran will make China seriously reconsider its economic policy and its claims to Taiwan. And Russia should start lowering its demands and make a deal on Ukraine. I'm not sure I agree with him 100% because so far the Kremlin hasn't gotten something it can call a victory to run to its people and say, we have won. The kind of victory, let's say, that it can trumpet to the world. I think stopping the war is counterproductive for them at the moment and politically unprofitable. So until it becomes politically profitable for the Kremlin, the war, at least from their point of view, will not stop.
And Reagan, your old boss, my old boss, destroyed communism. In the 21st century, we had jihadism, and we really did. And the two main players were ISIS, the so-called Islamic State, and Donald Trump in his first term. We were both there. The caliphate, it was the size of the entire United Kingdom in Iraq and Syria, and we got Baghdadi, and it was completely destroyed. But the flip side of that coin was the Islamic Republic of Iran. So you had two things related to jihadists. You had ISIS and you had the IRGC and Iran. And now he is destroying the second part of this great jihadist stronghold. He will go down in history as the first president to win 2 wars. He won the war in his first term against ISIS. We hadn't won wars for a long time, but President Trump won that war. We took the entire physical caliphate and then we found Baghdadi, deep behind enemy lines, and eliminated him. Now he's taking out the Ayatollah, and he's going to deal with Iran, and he's won 2 wars, and he'll go down in history alongside Roosevelt, Reagan, and Trump. You'll hear those 3 names together. So, Larry, you were among the few who foresaw this from the start?
Well, that's very kind of you, but I have never, ever lost faith or confidence in President Trump, and he has always had a clear vision. And, he's a great negotiator, but if you can't negotiate with these people, like we can't, no one can believe a single word that Iran ever says. We've learned that the hard way. So now he has taken actions that previous presidents would not have dared to take. Yes, I acknowledge Trump, Reagan, and I'll include Roosevelt as the 3 most significant and influential presidents of the 21st and 20th centuries.
What does all this mean? That war today is a battle of technologies. It's a competition in the ability to bring science into the art of warfare. As Zaluzhny said about the war on the ground, technology has completely changed the tactics of combat. In the same way, we now see how technology in the sky is changing all calculations and plans, and tomorrow we won't need pilots at all. These flying fortresses will fly on their own, strike multiple targets, drop their deadly payload, and fly back. They won't need to rest along the way. And from exactly the same ones, these AI refuelers, they will approach in the air and keep flying further. So that means we won't need bases all over the world. We also won't need to maintain tens of thousands of soldiers. You don't need to feed them, give them water, or, I don't know, train them. You don't need to show how to conduct military operations. None of that will be necessary. You train an AI and then it trains other AIs just like itself in a matter of minutes. As it became clear today, well, AI, yes, artificial intelligence will be doing all this instead of us. Well, and some will consider it fortunate, and others unfortunately, but we do this much more efficiently. So here we come to the difference between Russia, which entered Georgia with tanks, and then Ukraine, and the U.S. with Venezuela and Iran, as well as pressure on Cuba, Mexico, and other countries in the region. By the way, have you noticed that all Muslim countries are incredibly underdeveloped? I mean, they may have a lot of money from natural resources, but they are underdeveloped. Russia went in with ground equipment, just like everyone else. They took territory from these countries. To change the policy and behavior of these countries, it acted both as a military, attacking military targets, and as a terrorist, attacking civilians. Like everyone else, it tries to break the spirit of the two peoples. Destruction and killings. The U.S. never intentionally attacks civilians. Israel, for example, even warns civilians about bombings and gives them 4 hours. Like, there will be an air raid on this neighborhood, so to speak, guys, in 4 hours, and then again, in 2 hours, Russia's goal is to kill as many old people, women, and children as possible. And the goal of the U.S. and Israel is to disarm as much as possible, to destroy more of the military arsenal in order to suppress the enemy's resistance. And the last difference, the capabilities of the U.S. Army are assessed and reported to the political leadership with maximum accuracy. In the Russian Federation, they report to the top what the leadership would like to hear. And the person reporting wants to get either a rank or a gift, like a dacha, an apartment, a Mercedes SUV, or a mistress from the royal baths, or maybe all of the above together. And the last one. The Israeli and U.S. armies are motivated, but the Russian army are surprisingly unmotivated for war, only for looting. But when it comes to looting, if they're promised that they'll capture some village and get to take out toilets from there, they'll do that easily and with great pleasure. There's also a difference in the enemy. In Iran, 20% of the population wants to resist the U.S. and Israel, and 80% dream that the enemies would win as soon as possible. In Ukraine, 80% wanted to resist, and only 20% wished for victory, meaning for the Moscows. All this led to the fact that in Ukraine, Russia has already been stuck for 4 years, and it's still unknown how long this killing will continue. And in Iran, not a single U.S. or Israeli soldier, I'm not talking about intelligence now, has set foot on Iranian territory, and most likely, except for special forces, they won't. What are the chances that Ukraine can continue the war for several more years? If they find someone, well, a rich uncle or aunt, who will be ready to put up $50 to $80 billion a year. If, so to speak, the uncle or aunt disappears, then, well, half a year, maybe a year. That means after that they might surrender, or the Ukrainians might run out of people, those capable of fighting, or they might keep the western part, well, let's say, of the country for themselves, and organize, I would say, a compact Ukrainian independent state of about 25, maybe 30 million people, and continue their culture, their traditions, continue to be, so to speak, slaves to their own oligarchs and not Russian ones. If the hands of fate turn toward Russia, that is slavery to your own, who speak Ukrainian, or slavery to outsiders who speak the Russian language. In Iran, the options are different. If the country doesn't surrender, or rather, not the country, let's say, if the Revolutionary Guards surrender, then most likely their own people, even if the Americans don't touch them, will hang them from poles and trees, right? But thank God only about 20% of the population is connected to the regime. Therefore, in order to avoid mass bloodshed, either they should be offered to stay in power but give up, let's say, their nuclear and other military technical ambitions, or they will have to be completely destroyed, which will lead to streams of refugees heading to Europe. They can't go to Sunni countries because they won't be accepted, and if they are, they'll definitely be hanged there. So, most likely it will be necessary to make agreements with the regime and shift Iran onto a more peaceful path over, let's say, a decade or more. And the Iranian leadership might decide that during this time, either Trump will no longer be there, or maybe America will collapse, I don't know. And they might be able to win back everything they've lost, so to speak. Everything they've lost, they could get it back later. Territorially, Iran, like Ukraine, won't suffer, and no one will give part of its territory to the Kurds, who, by the way, make up 7%, and no one will give part of the territory to the ethnic Azerbaijanis. They make up more than 20% of the population, although the Turks and Azerbaijanis would be very happy with such an outcome. Iran will most likely remain united under the rule of the same group as now. Well, of course, the faces will change, but on the condition that ethnic and opposition representatives are introduced into the government. The active phase of the war, unlike in Ukraine, will most likely end there within 3 to 4 weeks. Well, let's give it another couple of months to settle the agreements. So by the beginning of summer, most likely, Iran will have a new temporary transitional government acting with an eye on the United States. And in another year, or year and a half, so to speak, there will already be a normal government. And Iran will start talking to Israel about signing the Abraham Accords and exchanging ambassadors and so on. They will start technological and scientific cooperation. There is nothing better than this, so to speak, for Farsi speakers, for Persians. But, ladies and gentlemen, plans are made to be broken. So let's not get our hopes up, as they say, but let's believe in the best. It's possible that there will be some escalation for a few days now, and the current rulers will fight for the best terms when discussing the conditions of surrender. Around the world, well, probably the rise in oil prices will have an impact. But as soon as the war, the active phase, ends, prices will go back down. The thing is, OPEC has agreed to produce more, and America is now already producing 14 million barrels every day. It used to be 12, so we've increased by, about how many percent, right? We've increased by more than 12 or 13%, and we keep increasing production. From the perspective of the elections, if by November, by the time of our elections, the war is still ongoing, that's a huge minus for Trump and the Republicans. But if by the end of summer or by the very beginning of autumn it stops and the problem is resolved, then that's a big plus for the Republicans and Trump. Well, as always, the wallet decides everything. People vote with their wallets. They say people vote with their feet, but in the end, so to speak, where do the thoughts for the feet come from? From the wallet. Let's hope that, so to speak, it will hit the wallet a little at first, then everything will recover, and people will see how much better the direction set by Trump is compared to the direction the Democrats say he's leading us in. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for listening. And a big request, don't forget about the bell. The bell is very important. Subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to hit the bell. Well, you'll get notifications on time and so on. But mainly we need this so that the algorithm, His Holiness the algorithm, well, let's say, treats us better, and would show it to a larger number of people who are outside our usual circle of viewers. Once again, thank you, goodbye, and see you next time.